Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Podcast Pasta. That's podcast that's like pasta, not the podcast that's about pasta. As always, I'm your host, Mike, and today I am joined with Gogan. You are an animator yourself. I mainly found your work through you do like these kind of animation tutorials where you talk about like different ways that people can improve their animation. I believe you also work as part of the independent game studio. Gogan, how are you doing today?
Good, yeah, man. I'm really happy that you brought me on to the show, and I'm really excited for answering any questions that you throw at me. I think it's gonna be awesome.
Great, great. Now, Gogan, you're actually kind of in a very unique position for this podcast because usually people that I bring on are kind of, more independent. They're kind of like starting off in their career. But for yourself, you're a 15 plus year veteran in the field, at least from what I could read on your profile here. I know I gave you a very brief introduction, but I guess if you kind of want to expand on that and explain in your own words, like what you do and what motivates the work that you put out.
Yeah, so I currently work for Squanch Games. You might know them for the High on Life games. Those are the a lot of people don't correlate that name, but when I say talking gun game, they kind of go, "Oh yeah, the game with talking guns." And that's what I do now. And I did most of the cinematics on High on Life 2. I did a lot of that. I really enjoy indie game development. That's what I've kind of stuck to throughout the 15 years. And I've done a lot of animations all over for a lot of different things, but the indie thing is just kind of it's really where it's at for me, just because there's a lot of collaboration that happens. There's a lot of really cool creative ideas that come out. Uh, but when you go to like bigger studios, I'll just throw out like Blizzard or something or some of those bigger name studios. It kind of lends itself to not being able to be as creative just because they have more of this is the way we do things, this is the game we're making, and so because of this, this is what we're going to put out. But like more of the indie scene is you have a lot of people being like, oh, what if we did this? What if we did this? And their game is just kind of building and growing with the artists and with the people that are making the game. And it's not like this set in stone thing. It's very flow, creative flow. And, I'm all for that. And I encourage more indie stuff coming out than bigger studio stuff. We obviously get more quality games with bigger studios. Just they have a higher budget, but in my eyes, the more fun, whimsical games that have a lot of passion are come from indie studios, not the bigger studios that have big investors and everything.
Okay, so this next question is always, I always conceptualize it in my mind as like the resume question because I know you talked about, you've worked with Squanch Game, or I'm sorry, Squanch Games for High on Life, right?
Right. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And you've, worked with other independent studios, but I guess even pulling back further than that, I guess, because I imagine you studied animation in a collegiate sense in order to, get to where you are now. But so I guess kind of just fill me in a bit more on that, like, how were your studies with animation? Well, what particular program did you go through, etc.
Yeah. So I started at the Art Institute, and that was a whole bag of whatever with them. But I actually no, sorry, go a little further back. I started at a more local college in Utah, and as I was going through the program, I didn't like the art program there, and so I went ahead and just said. At the same time, my wife was actually looking for a culinary college to go to because she really enjoyed cooking and wanted to learn how to do it as a profession, and the Art Institute offered culinary at the same time as art, and so like visual art, and they had an animation program, and so I went and they interviewed me to see if I wanted to be an animator. I did, and I it was a 4-year track, and so I did my bachelor's degree there, and I did my core classes first. And this is kind of backwards to what a lot of people do, but I did my core art classes first so I could spend the last year and a half just perfecting my animation skills. And it actually ended up paying off because I got my first job a year before I graduated, which is not the typical case in this industry.
Now, I know a lot of your content, like I mentioned earlier, is focused on kind of teaching different animation tips and tricks to help people, improve their craft. And that's kind of interesting because I always ask artists, like, kind of general tips about, like, because I a lot of times I treat this show like, let's say if someone's a huge fan of your work, like, what would they do to get started and different things like that. So I guess, as somebody that is content is focused on like helping to improve other people's animations, what do you think is the most common mistake that up and coming animators make when they first start out?
I think one of the biggest things that a lot of student animators miss out on or think that they just don't realize that they should do is just, especially nowadays with how big social media is and how important it is and just how much of life and society is part of. Uh, I don't think they realize they need to get online and be a part of some kind of community of other animators, short films, indie projects, and all that, and not feel like they need to isolate themselves and get better by themselves, as much as you can, put your work out there, get it out there and get it seen and get the feedback because likely if you're putting your work out there and people are seeing it constantly, these animation leads at these studios, whether it's an indie or a bigger studio, they will be able to see your content a lot more and you will be the forefront at their brains when they're like, we need a junior animator. Oh, wait, I saw this guy or gal that's been doing animation and they post often. And they've come a long way since I've seen them, their very first animation, or whenever I saw them, they've come a long way 6 months later. So I'm going to reach out to those people. Or if that student does apply for the job, they're like, hey, I remember seeing this work on Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever else, like X or whatever. And you're at the forefront of a lot of people's minds, and you're the first person they're going to contact because you have been part of a community and you have been getting feedback on, wherever, and you've just been growing as an artist and an animator. And that's what studios want to see. And I think that's a really big missed opportunity that students don't take advantage of.
Now, I've only very recently discovered your work, and I'm not sure how long you've been necessarily doing, like, again, these tutorial type videos where you go into some more, I guess the nuances of like certain animation techniques and things like that. But what was, as somebody that was coming from just, doing animation and stuff, what was the biggest difficulty for you in, I guess, kind of approaching that, like, tutorial type content?
Uh, I learned a lot, and it goes back to what I just said. Like for the longest time, I wanted to just help other animators. I actually started a YouTube channel a couple of years ago, and it was like 2.5 years ago or so. And I was like, whatever, nobody's gonna watch my stuff. It's boring. Nobody's gonna watch me animate for an hour because that's how long I wanted my episodes to be on YouTube. And I just had the thought, nobody's gonna watch me for an hour. They're just gonna think it's boring. And I released my first video, and it actually, in a smaller scale, kind of blew up. And so I just kept posting these hour-long tutorials, coming up with new ideas where I could help where I thought would be helpful. And people were saying in the comments and messaging me personally and sending me DMs and saying, your content is amazing. I'm binging it like Netflix. And I'm like, oh, wow. And I did not expect that at all. And so from there, I'm like, you know what, maybe this is something that I can actually do as more legitimate thing. And I was doing it for a long time. I also had my Discord server that I took over. It was one of my buddies, and I took it over because he gave it to me. And it was only a handful of members of the Discord server there, and I started just going, man hunting on like LinkedIn and saying, "Hey, come join this Discord server," and leaving small little notes for people on LinkedIn, and I would mention the Discord server, and then it blew up as well with my tutorials, and now it's at about 2,500 around there or so Discord members. So it's kind of something that just exploded, and I didn't wasn't the intention. I just wanted to help some people, and it ended up going really far. And I had to take a break for a while because of production on High on Life 2, and so now High on Life 2 ended the production for that, and it released, and I was able to get on Instagram more and start posting quicker videos for people. It's kind of like I have to kind of pick and choose where I release my videos. I still have my YouTube channel, and I want to release more long form content. But on the other hand, Instagram is short form, and I'm able to get more tips out a lot faster. Unfortunately, I'm not able to get into the really super detailed stuff like I was on my YouTube channel.
Now, I guess since I have you on, I'm kind of curious to, I guess, negotiate a previous take I had in one of my episodes here, and kind of get your thought on it, since you are so familiar with, I guess, the animation, I guess, the animation industry at large. So a little while back ago, I did kind of this episode where the topic of it was discussing like one of the newer Spider-Man animated shows that came out. And it's talking about how, I kind of gave this, I don't know if it's controversial take, but this idea that I think animation sometimes for animated shows can be overrated in terms of their success, right? That I don't think, good or bad animation necessarily makes or breaks the appeal of an animated show. And the examples I gave are like, you have Adult Swim, which has like kind of cheaper quality animation to a lot of their shows, and it kind of adds to like the humor of that. So I guess I'm kind of curious, like what are your thoughts on that? Like, as somebody that has worked in animation, do you think that yeah, I guess yeah, I guess just what are your thoughts on that in general? Like, how much emphasis do you think has to be placed on animation for these types of projects?
I think it's actually a really interesting point because animation doesn't necessarily have to be incredibly high quality to be enjoyable. But I do think making it more polished will open it up to more of an audience. My wife can't stand to watch certain animation episodes or things because she can tell the quality isn't as high as some of the other things. So Spider-Verse, that was a very stylistic choice for the show, and it's what we refer to as on twos. A lot of that movie was on twos, and that just means they don't play every single frame. They play every other frame of animation, and and so you have this really cool stylistic kind of 2D feeling with the textures and with the models. It felt more 2D, and so nobody had done that before. And because nobody had done that before, you only had Disney and Pixar and DreamWorks and big studios like that doing this really smooth, nice animation. And 2D was kind of taking a back seat for a long time. But then Spider-Verse came out, and people hadn't seen it before. And, coming from animators and artists' perspective, it's like, wow, this studio has merged 2D and 3D in this really appealing way that looks really unique, that's never really been done before. And if it had, it hadn't been done the right way. And so that right there made its appeal just really huge. Now, Rick and Morty, we'll talk about Rick and Morty, is definitely a stylistic choice in and of itself, just animation quality, but it's very intentional. Like Rick and Morty has a high budget, but the animation isn't necessarily like super top quality, but that's a stylistic choice. And some companies don't stylistically do it that way. They just do it whatever money they have the budget for. Like kids animated shows, definitely they don't lean into more polished work for animation, and so it lends itself to not as good quality. But because they're kids, the kids don't care necessarily about how good the animation is. But I think it, in the back of the mind, I think people know when they are watching bad quality animation, and they're like, I don't know if I really like that. And I think I don't know. I don't think they understand why they didn't like it coming from a non-animator or a non-artist. Just a regular person that isn't part of the art community and just going to enjoy a movie. I think people can come out of a movie like, I didn't really like that. The story could be fine and great and all, but there was some part of it that just didn't click. And I think psychologically, it could have been due to poor quality animation and art in general.
Now, going into kind of a favorite segment I always like to do, one I've been doing for a little while with other guests is, working in animation for so long, I guess I'm kind of curious, are there any kind of critiques about like the animation industry, or I guess even just animation in general, that you have? Basically, I'm kind of just asking kind of for like your hot animation take.
Uh, uh, Ask me the question again. I'm kind of, I need to understand it a little bit better.
Okay, like any, like, I guess criticisms that I think are unique to you that you think would be kind of, let's say, very lightly controversial, that you think would kind of go against the mold that some other animators would kind of advise or so.
So like not part of the status quo or taboo
Yeah.
to the animation industry.
Yes. Yeah. Something like that. Like something that you think would kind of.
Uh,
I mean, I'm saying this very jokingly, but catch you a little
opinion.
heat, right? In like some animation.
Unpopular
circles.
opinion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see. Give me just a minute to think
Come
about
on, you've
that.
been in the animation industry for a long time. Surely you've had like some gripes with it every now and then.
Yeah, well, I mean, I I don't like. It kind of goes back to the indie thing. I really don't like big name studios. I just don't like them. I think they are, and maybe that's not an unpopular opinion. Maybe a lot of people do not like them. I don't think that they should be around, only because I don't think that they are, like, their best intentions aren't for the players or the viewers. Their best intentions are for the businessmen, and they're not thinking about what actually matters. And that's why we're having all these layoffs and everything in the art industry. Is because all, during COVID, we just had all these businesses hire all of these people to mass produce consumption of entertainment, which is video games. Um, and it and because of that, now coming off of COVID, years later, all these companies are having to do these mass layoffs, and it's really frustrating. And something that actually is, I think, just a little bit maybe controversial is, I don't think that a lot, like, just because AI is coming up, right? It is just easy to blame AI that is the reason for all the layoffs. I think it's happenstance that AI is coming up at the same time as we are coming off of COVID. And it's like, oh, AI is the problem, that all of these artists are losing their jobs. That is not the case. The case is COVID, we're post COVID, and all of these dumb companies hired people for the mass consumption of society in general. And because of that, now they have to lay everybody off because nobody's playing video games as much as they were, or watching entertainment as much as they were when they had to stay home and be secluded in their house. They want to get outside again and go back to regular life. So that's my take on that.
Hmm. Okay, very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I would see it as like kind of a combination of different factors, but I think you do have a very interesting point. Um, Going back to kind of your work, I think recently you made like a short video talking about how one of your more recent projects is kind of let me see if I could get this right. It's kind of like this third person military shooter, but the art style is kind of akin to like the stop motion Aardman type like shorts, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So
Uh,
if
yeah.
you're at liberty to talk about that more, I'd love to hear more about it.
Oh, sure. Any exposure that I can get is fantastic. But it's really cool. I actually saw the project a while back for with the developers, and I said, "Hey, I want to be a part of this cool project. I love the style you're going for, and I think I could um, help you guys." And they're like, "Okay, yeah, let's see what you got." And so I kind of offer, they saw my animation. They're like, "Yeah, we would love your help." And we got together at McDonald's, honestly, for lunch and just kind of talked about it. And things have been going great, and it's been really cool. And I am happy to do animations for the game, but also get it out there online and everything. But the really cool part about it is a stop motiony Arden style game. Everybody loves. I don't know about everybody, but Wallace and Gromit style Aardman stuff is always been such a fantastic art style, and if you can put that in a game, I mean, you're just automatically have a hit for a game. The gameplay and everything has to feel good, obviously, but if the gameplay feels good enough and you've got Aardman style stuff, that that's an automatic classic hit, and it's going to be really awesome. I think, and I think it's going to be one of those games that just kind of really explode solely for the fact that, like we kind of talked about with Spider Verse, it's kind of a style that hasn't been done, and if it has, it's not been done the right way or done enough, and so I think it's going to launch into something that's really really cool because of the art style, stop motion animation kind of thing. And that, as an animator, that just excites me that, stop motion is amazing. And that just excites me to help with the project.
Now, you said you met up with other developers like in person, right? So, are you working as an in-person team, or is like kind of a hybrid team? What's the nature of that?
Yeah, it's just on the side, I still have my regular job, but just on the side when I can provide help, and it's all kind of our side jobs that when we have time, we work on it and we put assets in the game, and it's more of a remote thing. We're all just kind of remote. Luckily, there's like three of us, and we all live in the same city. Happenstance, like that wasn't planned. We already just did. It was kind of weird, but but like I said before, we go to lunch and talk things out if we need to, and then other than that, we're just put stuff up, game assets and everything up into like a server, and then the main engineer, designer, programmer is putting the game together, and then the other two guys, me and then another guy, are providing the art assets to make the game look really cool.
Um, and yeah, I think that was one thing I was going to say too, is that with the way that it's being animated right now, it does really capture that kind of Aardman feel. I think sometimes even better than Aardman did, because I remember, I think, well, granted, this was way back in the day. Like Aardman did like Flushed Away, where they were trying to kind of go into more 3D animation, because obviously, like at the time and even now, their stop motion like claymation process, it was and still is very expensive, so they're trying to venture off into that. But a lot of people didn't really care as much for it because it lost kind of it was like kind of a smoother animation process for them. So I do appreciate that this game is going out of its way to kind of like really capture that old feel of like the Aardman animation. You showed off in the video that I think it's kind of like a very basic prototype. So if you're free to kind of divulge, how far in development is the game right now?
Yeah, it's far. It's far. I mean, there's a Steam page for it. We have a Discord that people can go to and get a help test the game, which is what every game needs, as much testing as possible. And It's just called Raven King Studios, and the game is actually pretty far along. This year, we're hoping to get it um, on Steam fully, so more it opens up to more people to test and demo, and then probably hopefully sell it this year at some point. Hopefully, I mean, game development can push get pushed farther for a game just because there's something called scope creep where features and things just kind of sometimes want to be put in a game but also need to be put in a game because people, fans and everything, will say it'd be really cool if this was in the game. And then especially for indie studios, like, okay, we want this game to be really enjoyable, are we going to put this in the game? And then they're like, yeah, let's put this in the game, I think it'll really add to it. And the we're testing the Aardman uh, 2D thing, and I think we still have some prototyping we need to do with it to get it to that really good feeling. But I think when it comes out, and if we can pull it off, it'll really capture a lot of eyes and a lot of audience that want this kind of a game to come out.
Now, even talking beyond that, and if for whatever reason you can't like necessarily discuss something further, just we could just feel free and like skip it ahead. But outside of that, I know you said that you've recently finished up work on like High on Life 2, but I guess broadly, what other projects do you have on the horizon? Again, I'm sure you probably can't discuss if there's anything new with High on Life 2 because I know they might be working on DLC for it. I'm not necessarily sure. Just whatever you can talk about, just talk about any future projects that you have on the horizon.
Future projects specific to Squanch Games.
Or anything you could discuss, because I imagine, like, I don't know how. I mean, again, I don't know the nature of like NDAs. Like, hey, why did you discuss this on like podcast pasta, right? Like, I don't want to get you in trouble
Right,
or
yeah.
anything.
No. Yeah, no, I can't really say anything about what Squanch is doing, but I can say what I'm doing. We've got Bunker Z, the name of the game that we were talking about, the Aardman style game. We've got that coming up. I have another game that I'm helping develop on the side for my own little team that isn't a part of Bunker Z, and it's coming up as well. And it's like a more Zelda inspired game with the linear path, not this open world thing that I think needs to be done again. And a lot of people draw inspiration from Zelda, but it's going to be a really cool experience, and that's what I have coming up soon as well. And I'm always doing more, as much Instagram stuff as I can for people. I'm thinking highly about doing more of a school type thing where I get a handful of individuals and take them through an animation course of my own. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool projects that, for me personally, that are in the works that I hope come to fruition. And if my Instagram and X and my online social accounts keep being successful, those things will be able to come out of that and uh, come to fruition and be successful as well.
Well, Gogan, time flies when you're having fun, and we are approaching the end of the episode. If you want to go ahead and shout out where people can find you and where people can find your work.
Yes, thank you so much. Gogan Animation is where all my channels are on. I post the most on Instagram. I post on X as much as I can as possible where it makes sense. on Instagram, it makes a little more sense to post certain things. On X, it makes a little more sense to post certain things. But I'm on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, X, all the places, really, honestly. And they're all going really great. So I appreciate you having me on the show. And it was a fun time, and I really enjoyed talking about it. And I hope we can come back and for future stuff. I think it was fun.
Great, and thank you again for coming on the program. For those of you who want to stick by, you can watch Peppermint on the side, where I try to find Waldo in real life. We'll see how that goes. All right, take care.